and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with the king, no matter, he'll get us today. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I said, can I be a legend? Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes?
Good night, everyone. Welcome back to your favorite sports show. It is indeed #ThisJustIn, not to be confused with whatever ESPN is putting out there with Matt Skellerman on the middays. But you know what time it is, right before Monday Night Football. That means we have a big show just for you. And welcoming back one of our, I guess he's family by now, Calvin Domingo, otherwise known as Steezy A Smith. How is it going to seem? It's good to see you back in your studio, man.
Oh, thank you, my brother. Yeah, I'm feeling wonderful. I'm all good now. It's been a couple days over here. Sorry to grow out the beard. But I apologize, I'm running late. But, feels good to do this. Always a pleasure, always an honor. And shout out Neil as well.
Nah, the beard is a good look on you. I love the beard.
Thank you, brother. Thank you so much.
What was also a good look, well, I'm hoping for a good look from my Packers tonight over the lanes, but, we'll get to that. That's Monday Night Football. What was a good look for the Baltimore Ravens, at least, was last night 36-35 victory over those, we could as well call them the boogeyman for them right now, the Kansas City Chiefs, that they could not get beaten. We know the stats. Lamar Jackson threw for 239 yards, ran for 107 more, 3 total touchdowns. Awesome last-second victory. But, Steezy, with all that being said, this game, was it a bigger result for Baltimore or a worse loss for the Kansas City Chiefs?
I got to go Baltimore here. Like you said, Kansas City has essentially been Lamar's boogeyman for the last couple of seasons, ever since he stepped foot as a starting quarterback in the National Football League. Instead of leaving last night 0-4, he's now 1-3. Or it was 0-3 before, right?
Yeah, 1-3 before this.
Yeah, so, okay. Instead of leaving last night 0-4, he's now 1-3. Like he said, he finally got that monkey off his back. And after their Monday night debacle against the Raiders and how they managed to lose that game, everyone was kind of thinking like, oh my, the Baltimore Ravens season is over. Maybe they can't overcome all the injuries to the running back room. Maybe they can't overcome the injury to Marcus Peters, a depleted secondary, a depleted running back room. How are they going to be able to manage to go through all these injuries? A makeshift, a new offensive line. Lamar, there's still questions about him as a passer. And here they come in on Sunday Night Football. Lamar's able to make up for his mistakes and lead that game-winning drive. He goes for it on 4th down. He finally gets the monkey off his back. And he finally has a win against Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs, arguably the second-best team in all the National Football League. This has got to be about the Baltimore Ravens. I understand the Chiefs. They pretty much shot themselves in the foot, right? If Andy Reid had given the ball to Pat Mahomes instead of CEH, we're probably talking about a different outcome. We're probably talking about how the Chiefs won and how Lamar lost yet another game to the Kansas City Chiefs. But look, this is the National Football League. Anything can happen. Any team can win any given Sunday. And so I got to go with the Ravens. A win is a win. So no matter how they got it, no matter if it's because the Kansas City Chiefs, self-inflicted themselves, it don't matter. Lamar got the monkey off his back. He finally won. And a lot of credit goes out to Lamar, Coach John Harbaugh, and shout out the rest of the Baltimore Ravens, man. I'm really happy for him.
I'm with you, Steezy. It is huge for Baltimore, especially, you don't want to go 0-2. I think we all know the stats of teams trying to make the playoffs after losing their first 2 games. Although that being said, when you look within the division, even had they lost both games or gone 0-2, the reality is they would have only been a game behind the Steelers, Bengals, and Browns, and they still would have had all 6 division games to play. But as you correctly said, you want to get that monkey off your back. And this is not any ordinary team, although they're not in the same division. This is a team that has been to 3 straight AFC title games, 2 successive Super Bowls, and won them. So the numbers are telling you if you're going to get to the Super Bowl out of the AFC, you're likely going to have to go through the Kansas City Chiefs. So you're going to have to beat them at one point. And then you mentioned the injuries, which I thought were so relevant and pertinent to this game. You're down your first 3 running backs, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, Justice Hill. You're out Rashad Bateman for this game. Out Marcus Peters for the rest of the season. And then you said they lost a safety and their nose tackle in this game. So you had every excuse to lose this game, and then you fell behind by double digits. I want to say 11 twice in this game. And not only that, but those 2 first quarter interceptions. For Lamar Jackson to show the poise that he had during this game, to get past those interceptions, the double-digit deficit, to know that everything was on him. Like, he had to throw the ball, he had to run the ball, he had to do everything. I mean, granted, this game was essentially won by that fumble. As you said, like, I don't know why Andy Reid would put the ball in Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's hands. I'm not the best player in all of football. Like, you have Patrick Mahomes, you have Travis Kelce, you have Tyreek Hill. They don't know why would you opt to go to Clyde Edwards-Hilaire there. But for Lamar Jackson to do everything there, when everyone would have given him an excuse with all those injuries, with the double-digit deficits, the fact that this is a Kansas City Chiefs team you've never beaten. He could have used every single excuse, and he stood poised and basically put the team on his back. But I do still think there is a measure of concern here for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'll say this because you gave up, I want to say, 251 yards rushing when the entire world knew that Baltimore is coming to run the football, especially on that 4th and 1. You knew who was coming to run the football. There was no one else touching that football but Lamar Jackson. You couldn't stop that. On top of allowing 251 yards in this game, they have allowed a total of 404 rushing yards for the entire season in 2 games. 404 at an average of over 6 yards per carry to the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens. This has to be an area of concern because this is the way that teams are going to keep your high-powered offense with Patrick Mahomes on the sideline. This is how they're going to beat you. And you know me, Steezy, I've been on record before as saying I don't think the Buffalo Bills are the Chiefs' biggest rival in this conference. I honestly think it is the same Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. These 2 teams, in my estimation, are the ones built to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And if they cannot stop the run, which both teams are exceptionally good at, then you're going to have problems come playoff time going down the road. That being said, Baltimore still has not won a Super Bowl with Lamar Jackson. In your mind, Steezy, with this victory, does this prove that the Ravens can win a Super Bowl with this style of play?
That's tough. That's a great question. Honestly, given the state of the roster, I'm gonna have to say no. Like, yes, they were able to get a great victory, well-earned, well-deserved victory against the Kansas City Chiefs. Like I said, mad props, mad respect to them, mad respect to Lamar Jackson. He's made strides as a passer. But the NFL, in terms of players injured, in terms of players on IR, I just don't see Lamar being able to make up for all these mistakes or being able to make up for what they don't have on the roster as of right now for the rest of the season, even come playoff time. Now, he could definitely guide his team to the playoffs. They could still definitely win the division. They could still definitely make some noise in the playoffs. But as far as winning the Super Bowl, even advancing to the Super Bowl, I think we're going to have to pump the brakes. I mean, if Lamar ends up becoming a top 5 passer, because we all acknowledge him as a top 5 quarterback, maybe top 6, top 7. But if he ends up becoming a top 5 passer in the NFL, then yes, this team will be able to make up for everything that they don't have, for all the injuries that they're going through. But I got to say no, and it pains me to say that because I'm a Baltimore Ravens fan. I like Lamar Jackson. He's one of my favorite players to watch, very entertaining. And obviously, as you guys all know, I'm a Seahawks fan, so don't hurt me, but I like the Ravens. I root for them. And so it pains me to say that, but I got to say no until I see Lamar make more strides as a passer. Look, the Kansas City Chiefs, yes, they're bleeding yards on defense in terms of the run, right? But granted, they have gone up against 2 top 3 teams in the NFL in terms of rushing. The Browns and the Ravens have been top 2, top 3, top 5 in the last couple of seasons. We know what their identity is. We know how they want to play football. We know how they like to run the football. And so I'm going to be super concerned about that. Now, if it happens continuously throughout the regular season and into the postseason, then I'll start to be more worried about the Kansas City defense. But until Lamar really takes that next step as a passer, I'm going to have to say no.
I'm with you, Steezy, but I will hold my judgment until I see Rashad Bateman take the field. And then I'll know for certain what strides he's made, because I've seen enough now to know that Hollywood Brown is not a number one receiver in this league. Neither is Sammy Watkins. We've seen him, when he came out of Clemson, oddly enough, he was the higher ranked receiver coming out of Clemson than DeAndre Hopkins. Who'd have thought, right? But we saw him in Kansas City, and we're seeing him now. These are not two number one receivers. It's all good that Mark Andrews is a really, really good tight end, but he can't be your number one option. So when Rashad Bateman finally takes the field, then I'll reserve judgment. So right now, I'll say I don't know. What I will say, it has to feel good in the Baltimore camp that you finally beaten Kansas City. That much is for certain. And this is going to sound weird, Steezy, but I'll say this. If the Baltimore Ravens never make a Super Bowl or never win one with Lamar Jackson, I wouldn't be overly concerned as much as I love the Ravens. I will say that the Baltimore Ravens did right by having Lamar Jackson as their quarterback, their franchise quarterback, and whatever money they pay him is well deserved. And it's weird for me to say this because I have been a critic of Lamar Jackson's inability to be a efficient passer of football, but no longer. I'm done with that. Because when you look at Lamar, right, that deficiency aside, Lamar Jackson has done everything this franchise asked of him and even more. There's no off-field drama. This guy comes into work every single day. He owns up to mistakes. When the team loses, you never even hear him say we. He puts the loss on himself. You saw the Las Vegas Raiders game. And yes, those two fumbles cost the team the game, but there were other problems, notably that offensive line. And no, Lamar Jackson owned that defeat, took it upon himself personally. This is the quarterback that any team would want as the face of their franchise. So for me personally, I'm no longer criticizing Lamar Jackson because what you see him in the media, you see him working out hard, no off-field drama, and he is a leader of men. I hate to use that term because it's used so willy-nilly, or I don't know, for generalities, for talking heads. But he is a legit leader of men. You see these players love him. John Harbaugh loves him. They all would go to war and die for Lamar Jackson. This is the guy you want as your franchise quarterback. And if this style of quarterback play never wins a Super Bowl for Baltimore, it's unfortunate. But I do think that Baltimore has done right by making Lamar Jackson their franchise quarterback. And you can't ask for anything more with this guy. But we're talking. Go ahead. Sorry, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, I think he already justified their selection of him when he won unanimous MVP. the first player to ever win unanimous MVP, I think that was already justified. Whether or not he makes another stride as a passer, to win an MVP unanimously in your second year in the league as a starter, to be the next coming to Michael Vick, but a lot more efficient as a passer, that already in and of itself justified their selection of him. And so, right there with you, brother.
And let me also add, since coming into the league in 2018, Lamar Jackson's not missed the playoffs not once. Then, they said, but he didn't get that playoff victory. Well, he has one now. This is a guy I want to say has more wins than almost every other quarterback possibly named outside of Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady in the regular season since he has been drafted. And you can't say that of Baker Mayfield. You can't say that of Josh Allen. You can't say that of Sam Darnold. All of these quarterbacks who were taken ahead of him. Baltimore did right by him. And even if they don't win a Super Bowl with this style of play, Steve is going to sound weird, but I have no problem because Lamar Jackson, any team should be proud to have Lamar Jackson as their quarterback or their franchise quarterback. So talking about winning Super Bowls, let's go to the other conference. We have a huge matchup for week 3. I know week 2 is not exactly over yet, but looking forward to week 3. We've got the Bucs going to the Rams. So, Steezy, I know it might be hard for me to answer this question, especially after the Seahawks lost to the Titans. But are we looking at a potential NFC title game preview?
Most definitely a potential one. Now, if you had to ask me what two teams do I have in the NFC Championship game, I'll tell you the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Seattle Seahawks. But if for whatever reason that doesn't end up being the matchup that ends up coming to fruition, then yeah, by all means, I definitely can see the LA Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC Championship. I mean, man, my gosh, 48 points. Everybody wants to talk about how Philly absolutely they absolutely demolished Atlanta in week 1 by 32-6. But here, Atlanta comes in scoring. I mean, Tampa Bay comes in scoring 48 points. They almost dropped the 50 burger on the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, my goodness, if you don't see this team going back to the NFC Championship, I think you might have to reconsider, what you know about football. I mean, this team is just absolutely dominant. All 3 phases, not just offense and defense. Special teams are a lot more than just competent. And so, yeah, Tampa Bay is definitely going to be there. LA, I mean, they didn't beat Indianapolis as soundly as Seattle did, nor did they beat Indianapolis as soundly as they beat Chicago in week 1, but you still saw a lot of good things. I mean, that relationship, that chemistry between Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, that might be what takes them over the top. We all know what their defense, what they bring to the table. We all know how great of a coach Sean McVay is. We all know how explosive that offense can be, and Matthew Stafford coming in is only really going to justify all that. And so, this can most definitely be an NFC Championship game preview. I can't wait for week 3 already.
I can't wait for it either, even as much as the Packers fan. And, both of them are unbeaten. We saw how Tampa Bay completely decimated Atlanta, especially in the division matchup. I take note of those because division matchups tend to be a lot harder than, other conference matchups or even other conference matchups. Like, for you to take a division rival and completely blow them out the water, as bad as Atlanta is touted to be. And make no mistake, Steezy, I think those Dallas Cowboys are a lot better than people want to give them credit for. But we'll get to that very shortly. So to see, Tampa Bay come up with those 2 victories, especially in the Rams, as you said, as much as they weren't overly convincing against the Colts, I still think that that's a decent Colts team, and they're unbeaten. And the reason I think that this may be an NFC title game preview is when you look at the other powers across the conference. I mean, sorry to bring this up, Steezy, but your Seahawks gave up a big double-digit lead against the Titans. And then when you look, my Packers got completely destroyed by the Saints and got completely destroyed by a Panthers team that no one expects to be unbeaten at this point. So you're saying, there are holes in the Seahawks, there are holes with the Saints, there are holes with the Packers, and missing another conference power.
There's the Cardinals, 49ers.
Oh, and the 49ers. That was a less than convincing victory over the Eagles. Granted, the Eagles are looking a lot better than a lot of us expected, but to me, I don't think that 49ers team is one that should be scoring 17 points, albeit on the road. And then, as much as they took their foot off the gas against the Lions, who were about to play just shortly, that also is a game that should be of concern because the Lions for the San Francisco 49ers is the team that should never, ever be within 1 score of them. This is a team touted to win a Super Bowl right now. They have a championship winning defense. And for them to give up huge double-digit margins for what the Lions only lost by 8 points in the end, that is much of a concern. So when I look at the state of the remaining NFC powers, a lot is pushing me towards thinking that this may indeed be an NFC title game preview. And all offseason, that's all we've been hearing. There are some concerns, though, Steezy, and I don't know if you share them with me, so I'll ask. I have some concerns over that Tampa Bay secondary, however.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I mean, you just go back to last year, right? And if I'm not mistaken, LA did beat Tampa Bay, right? Or did they? Yeah, to the audience, forgive me if, I'm kind of, sputtering here. I don't remember if the Rams beat the Buccaneers, but what I do remember is that Jared Goff and that passing attack absolutely shredded the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary last year, and that was with Jared Goff playing quarterback. And so if Matthew Stafford's going to come in and do the same thing, I mean, the Buccaneers might be in trouble. And so we'll see now if LA can run the football against Tampa Bay, because as we saw in week 1, I mean, my gosh, Zeke didn't have any running room. And in week 2, Cordell Patterson had himself a game, but he had 7 carries for 11 rushing yards. And so, nobody can run the football against this team. And so that being said, LA, maybe they're one of the few teams that can get away with being one-dimensional, seeing as how they're so explosive, seeing as how they're so creative, seeing as how they have all these playmakers, seeing as how they have a genius at the helm in Sean McVay. So they might be able to get away with it. I mean, but I share the same concern with you. I mean, just like with Kansas City and their run defense, Tampa Bay and that secondary is a real problem. week one, they did lose a little bit of depth in the form of Sean Murphy-Bunting. And so that might be playing a part in why the secondary has looked so awful. But going up against the Rams, their margin for error is going to be slim to none because that Rams passing attack is going to absolutely shred them like they did last year if they don't fix some of those issues.
I'm with you, but that front seven, my gosh. And Dominican Sue, Vita Veer, JPP, and then that linebacking core behind them, Devin White and Levante David. I'm doing this because I've been told I'm too negative, so I'm just giving Tampa Bay's defense some flowers, as you would say. And who I think we should also be giving their flowers to, how about them Cowboys? I'm not sure if you got a chance to watch the game, Steezy, but they pulled off a mighty impressive one-score road victory over the chick pick that everyone loves, so it seems, those LA Chargers. So, Steezy, what is your major takeaway from that one-score game?
I think that they don't need Dak Prescott to win every single football game for them. I think they could take a page out of the Cleveland Browns book and start employing more of a two-headed attack at running back. I mean, look, 31 carries for 198 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns combined. All the running backs, Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott, and Dak Prescott didn't throw for a single touchdown. He had 237 yards and 1 pick for a pass rating of 87.8, and yet they won this football game against a Los Angeles Chargers team that many expect to be a dark horse in the AFC. And there's one thing that I learned about this Dallas Cowboys team. They don't need Dak Prescott to win every single game for them. They can lean more on the ground attack and take a page out of the Cleveland Browns playbook.
I'll say this. This Dallas team is better than what a lot of people expected. As you said, they can turn to that two-headed run in the top. Ezekiel Elliott, I don't think is what we thought he was anymore. But, wow, Tony Pollard. I'll just say, wow. Micah Parsons, though, is the defender that I thought he would be. And the best thing that may have happened is that they moved him from inside linebacker to edge rusher because, my word, he really, really, really impacted this football game. But there are 2 major takeaways from this game, other than the fact that we all know Justin Herbert is really good. The first impact really for me, right, Steezy, is that the referees are getting too involved in these games. No one has paid to watch a zebra come to a game, as far as I know. Like in the history of football, no one pays to watch referees. And granted, a lot of those calls were, I'm not sure if you watched it, but a lot of those calls were indeed LA being very ill-disciplined. But there's one call in particular, like they call in a sack on Justin Herbert when it's clear that he's still up on his feet trying to get rid of the football. Like, let the football play. No one is coming to watch you blow your whistle. And then, so from all these, ticky-tack fouls to blowing these taunting calls, you're asking people. Football is a little sport where I am going one-on-one with you. I am trying to be stronger, more physical to beat the man in front of me. I physically overpower you in a play after you beat me up an entire game, and then you want to blow me for showing me expression on the field. It's just crazy. But the second the most important takeaway from me, Steezy, Mike McCarthy is going to cost this team a playoff victory. Mark my words, and Green Bay Packer fans can tell you this. This is no surprise. Mike McCarthy has got to be one of the worst game managers at the end of any football game in terms of managing the clock. And I swear to you, he almost cost Dallas that victory. They get within, on the Chargers side of the field, with over 30 seconds to go, 1 timeout remaining, and you run a running play. Okay, no problem. But you don't use that timeout until you want to kick a field goal. 30 seconds, Steezy. There are at least 2 plays there. But you ran 1 play and are happy with a 56-yarder. 56 yards is not a gimme by any stretch of imagination, especially for a kicker that missed a chip shot against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And 2 extra points. What is Mike McCarthy doing? And the thing is, it should come as no surprise to me, Steezy, because I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. I've seen this guy get so afraid at the end of games, but it's almost like he is afraid to go for victories. He's afraid to lose games. And that can't be the stance of your head coach. Like, just suppose that with John Harbaugh. What did John Harbaugh do? John Harbaugh was not afraid. He shouted, I mean, we all knew that he was going to go for it, but he still checked in his quarterback. The first thing he said, like, Lamar, do you want to go for it? And that ball is on their side of the field. Imagine if Lamar Jackson does not get that. We're going to talk about that all today, all for the rest of the week. Because the Chiefs easily win that game afterwards. But no, John Harbaugh trusted the best player on the field to make a play to win the game instead of hoping to give it back to Chiefs. Because we give it back to Chiefs, you know what's going to happen. Mike McCarthy's not that dude. The best player on the field for the Dallas Cowboys has to be Dak Prescott. I'm going to put the ball in his hands, let me get closer. But it's almost like Mike McCarthy is afraid of turning over the football. I don't know how you feel about this, Steezy.
I see what you're saying, and I agree to a certain extent. But I do think there's a silver lining in that situation. As we all know, right, Greg Zuerlein, his nickname is Greg the Leg. And he has a history, he has a reputation of being one of the strongest kickers in all the National Football League. Back in his heyday with the Rams, this man was kicking 60-plus yard field goals as if they were 40-yarders. And week one, I'm not trying to give him any excuses or anything. I'm not even a Cowboys fan, so I wouldn't have any reason to. But Greg Zuerlein, all offseason, he had to deal with back surgery. He didn't participate in the preseason. He didn't get any reps at all. He was really recovering from back surgery. And so in week one, when asked about his performance, or when looking at his performance, one can only assume that, oh, he's rusty, he's coming off back surgery, he didn't get to kick all offseason, and he just hasn't been healthy. And so the silver lining is this. Maybe Mike McCarthy knows that Greg Zuerlein is now healthy. Maybe he's trying to inject some confidence into his kicker. And so he's given this notion that, hey, even if we're kicking a 55-yarder, 56, a 57, maybe even a 60-yarder, I've seen you do it before. You could do it again. Everyone's counting you out. Everyone's looking at your week one, and everyone is pooping on you. Well, let me give you a chance. Let me put you in the spotlight, and let us show the world who you once were, Greg the Leg. And so maybe he was like, instead of putting the ball into Dak Prescott's hands, we'll put it into Greg Zuerlein's hands, and simultaneously we'll inject some confidence, some much-needed confidence, because, look, you're going to need a reliable kicking game in the postseason. And so if Greg Zuerlein was to go throughout the regular season not having this confidence, if he's going to be missing kicks, that could only be a bad thing for the franchise, right? And so who knows, maybe Mike McCarthy, that's what he was aiming to do. Maybe he was looking to put some confidence into his kicker, because at one point he was probably the best kicker in all the National Football League. Maybe, top 2, top 3. Justin Tucker's been up there. And so I kind of think those were his intentions, and I'm going to stick to that. So maybe a little silver lining, who knows?
I love the takers, Steezy, and I would want to agree with you. Had I not seen Mike McCarthy coach me for over 10 plus years. So I'll just say I know the human being, and as much as it worked out, when you have a chance to improve a 56-yard field goal, you take that chance, because there's no guineas with 56-yarders. But I see your point. I just know Mike McCarthy just a little bit better. And my God, he is terrible at managing clocks.
No, and I can't blame you. He doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt. So, I will say that.
Sticking within the AFC West, I know a lot of us picked Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Chargers to come out of that division. But would you know it? Neither of the teams are leading the division at this moment. Would you guess if I had told you, Steezy, before the start of the season, at 2 games in, that it would be the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders who are still unbeaten after 2 games in this division? And, well, Raiders have, and these are not 2 easy wins, they have beaten, if memory serves me correct, the Ravens and the Steelers. And why that is so important, because not only are the Ravens and the Steelers perennial playoff contenders, but the Ravens and the Steelers this season already have beaten the last 2 teams in the AFC title game, being the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs this season. So, Steezy, with all that roundabout question, I'm going to ask you, are these Raiders actually legit?
I want to say yes. I really do. I even posted on Twitter, are the 2016 Raiders back? And for those of you who don't know, well, the Raiders went 12-4 in 2016, and Derek Carr received an MVP vote. And you look at Russell Wilson, he's never received an MVP vote in his career, but Derek Carr got one. in 2016, the Raiders went to him for, like I said, he had an MVP caliber season. I'm not going to knock him for that. And so at one point, this team was good. At one point, this team was a playoff caliber football team. And so I will give him that. I want to give him some respect. But this team started off hot last year. What was it? They were 5-2 after 7 games. They were like 6-2, something like that. And then they went back to doing Raider things, and they ended up missing the playoffs. And so, yes, they're having a great stretch. They've defeated 2 Super Bowl caliber football teams, the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've done it in spectacular fashion both times around. Their passing attack has looked absolutely phenomenal. Their defense has stepped it up a ton. Derek Carr is once again playing like a top 10 quarterback in all the National Football League. But until I really see them get to the second half of the season, until I see them make the playoffs, I can't say that this team is any different than the last couple of years. I mean, the rosters are still they're fairly the same. I mean, the offensive line has gotten worse. They've added some pieces on both sides of the football. They still have Derek Carr at quarterback, but John Gruden, I'm still not buying it. And so I will say that they're a better football team than they have been, but they still can revert back to doing Raider things. And so until it gets to the end of the year or come playoff time, I want to be able to reserve judgment. I don't want to, speak too soon. But at the same time, I don't want to, look down on them and not give them any credit, not give them any flowers for what they've done, because to beat the Ravens and the Steelers in back-to-back weeks in consecutive weeks, I mean, that's an accomplishment that not many other teams can really say. So I think right now what I will say, what I will do is I'll put them in my top 10 of my power rankings, but that's about as far as I'll go.
I don't know what to do. I don't know. And I mean, it's not like Denver, who's beaten up on 2 bad opponents. As you said, they've beaten up Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have 2 big wins over Buffalo and Kansas City Chiefs, respectively. So I don't want, as I said, not want to give them their credit. And as we've known, and you pointed out, the offense has never really been the problem. For whatever reason, John Gruden has for not liking Derek Carr or always seemingly want to move on for Derek Carr. Derek Carr has never been the issue with the Las Vegas Raiders. Like, we know that. The pass rush seems to be much improved. I just don't know. Maybe I didn't expect the Raiders to be this good, and this is why I don't want to give them full credit yet. I just don't know what to expect. I don't know what these Raiders are going to be. You said, I think they started, as you correctly said, they started 6-2 last season. So, like, a hot start is nothing new to them. I'll say this. I'll call it TBD, to be decided. I will wait, because every team kind of shows its colors. You know what a team is when they play division matchups. So I'll see what they are when they play the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Broncos. Broncos who are shockingly unbeaten. I'll reserve judgment till then. But I will say that Derek Carr looks like a top 10 quarterback, who I always thought was a top 10 quarterback in this league. I don't know why he doesn't get the respect that he deserves. I will say I don't think Baltimore had any right losing that Monday Night Football game, simply because Lamar Jackson's 2 fumbles allowed them to come back in fourth quarter and then overtime, respectively. I'll reserve judgment, Steezy. That's all I would say. I know Joe Morley is out there probably upset that we're not saying that the Las Vegas Raiders are indeed a Super Bowl contender. And would you know it, Steezy? I bet you don't know. Off-air or off-show producer Neil is a huge Raiders fan as well. So maybe we should be giving it. Maybe we should be giving the Raiders respect. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. We kind of keep that on the down low here at the show. But so maybe we should give them some sort of props before he causes technical difficulties behind his sidelines. Nah, Neil is professional. He won't do that, hopefully. But moving from one surprise team to another, Carolina Panthers are also unbeaten after 2 games. And, well, they beat up on the lowly Jets. They did indeed dismantle the New Orleans Saints, who dismantled the Packers in week 1. So, Steezy asks the same question. How good are these Carolina Panthers?
That's tough to say. I think they're going to be one of the peskier teams for teams to deal with. Granted, going up against the Saints, I think after the Baltimore Ravens, the Saints are actually second in the National Football League in terms of players that are either on IR or injured. And let's not forget, just last week or earlier in the week, the Saints had a COVID outbreak between all their assistant coaches. I think that might have affected the status of some of the players. But here's some of the notable players that didn't play in the Saints versus the Panthers. Marcus Lattimore, Quan Alexander, Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith. The list goes on. Their starting center, Eric McCoy. The list goes on. And so I'm not going to give the Saints any excuses and say that, oh, they only lost because they, had injuries. Every team deals with injuries. But the Saints look noticeably different on the road. They were missing so many of their key guys, some of their key pieces. They just looked so discombobulated that they didn't resemble the same team that beat up on the Green Bay Packers in week one. Now, as far as week one, when Carolina beat up on a Jets team, that's arguably the worst team in football. And so I don't know how much stock I could really put in that victory. And in week two, it's also kind of incomplete for me because the New Orleans Saints weren't anywhere close to full strength. They had probably about, half of their starters missing. And so it's kind of hard to judge, oh, yeah, the Panthers are going to be a legitimate football team because they beat up on a Saints team that are missing half of their starters. You know what I mean? But what I will say is, though, like I said in the beginning, the Panthers are going to be a pesky team. They still have Christian McCaffrey. He's healthy. DJ Moore, he's looking like he's finally starting to come into his own. He looks like he's primed for a career year. Sam Darnold, now that he's finally away from Adam Gase, he looks like a competent quarterback in the NFL, but that's about as far as I'll go. I'm not going to say he's a starter in the National Football League, but I think the Carolina Panthers and that defense is doing a pretty good job of masking Sam Darnold. That defense is very underrated. I can see them giving fits to a lot of teams in the NFL, and I can see them making a run at a wild card spot. But as far as this team being legitimate, as far as this team being a legitimate threat in the National Football League, in the National Football Conference, in the NFC, I'm going to say no. I need to see more.
I do need to see more as well. All I know is that Sam Darnold is trying to make a fool out of me because I have been wanting to see that. I do not trust him. But all he has done so far is complete 69% of his passes, average like 290 yards per game, 3 touchdowns, adjusted 1 pick for a passer rating, I think above 100. And he's done all of this with Christian McCaffrey only averaging, I want to say, 3.8 yards per carry at a total of 170 combined rushing yards over the 2 games. So it's not like he's there leaning on Christian McCaffrey and, picking off easy passes. Like Sam Darnold has been the engine on the offensive side. Like I don't know. I have to see them against further competition. But what I do know is that defense is for real. Mm-hmm. Because that defense has had, 10 sacks so far. Let me look down here. 10 sacks, 3 interceptions so far. And Hassan Reddick has looked like the real that the Arizona Cardinals drafted and hoped that he would be. That he looks like the real deal so far with a sack and a half in each game so far. They look unblockable up front, especially against the Saints. And this is a week right after I said that offensive line for the Saints was blowing people right off the lane. Like our Packers defensive front had absolutely no chance against the Saints. Like I want to say Alvin Kamara was getting touched. His first touch was like 4 or 5 yards down the field. So, but that was not the case against the Carolina Panthers. They completely balled him up. Jameis Winston came right back down to earth with 2 interceptions. Didn't even complete half his passes. Like I will say reserve judgment just like you until they play Tampa Bay Buccaneers and other teams of note. I am expecting Sam Darnold and praying, I'm hoping, because he must come back down to earth because Brian Bolster is going to hop on this show at some point to tell me he told me so that Sam Darnold just needed to get away from Adam Gase. But, Steezy, that defense is for real. And the moment that Christian McCaffrey solves things or that offensive line can get Christian McCaffrey back to what he was, he may be talking about a big wildcard team, but I don't expect them to win the division with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that same NFC South, but we could be talking about a wildcard contender.
No doubt.
Well, it's been a quick show because I really want to go and watch Monday Night Football. I don't know about you, Steezy. And speaking of Monday Night Football, you know what kind of fan I am. You can see everything behind me, on me, next to me. Go, Pack, go. After getting blown up with the Saints in week 1, what do my Packers or what you think my Packers need to do tonight to either convince you or at least come away with a win over the Detroit Lions?
To me, it's simple. Show up. Play Packer football. Act like you want to be there. If you do that, they're going to win easily, handily. I think they blow them out by 20+. That's my bold prediction. Other night, I just think that last week, like we talked about, because I mean, they just didn't want to be there. So all they got to do is show up. There's so much more. They're dealing with more injuries, and so on top of being talent deficient, they're also dealing with injuries. And so, look, Packers, just show up, just act like you want to be there. You'll blow them out. That's all I got to say.
I wish I was as confident as you, but I know how tough Detroit Lions tend to play us within the division. I'll shock you and say this, Steezy. There was a year or 2 years running right before Matt LaFleur took over that the Detroit Lions swept us in back-to-back years. Yeah, shocking.
Oh.
Yeah,
Wow.
The last 2 years of Mike McCarthy's tenure, we lost 4 games in a row to Detroit Lions. That's a bit shocking for people outside the NFC North. So I will say this, I don't expect an easy contest tonight. But there are 2 things I think the Green Bay Packers must do. First is establish a run. They have to get back to running the football consistently well. Everyone outside the organization talks about Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, obviously one a 3-time MVP and the other an all-pro wide receiver. But what a lot of people don't realize that Matt LaFleur's offense, which is basically Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is Sean McVay's offense, is predicated on running the football. And Aaron Rodgers is not going to look like the MVP candidate of 2020 if we don't establish a run. And that requires us to blow people off the offensive line. Unfortunately, we're starting 2 rookies, the center and the right guard. But we need to be able to establish a run so that we can do everything else, because that sets up the play action. And no quarterback was better on play action passes last year than none other, the MVP, Aaron Rodgers. That's one. Most importantly, though, and I don't know or I don't trust that we can get this done on a Joe Barry defense. I'm not even going to start as why we even brought in Joe Barry as our defensive coordinator, but we have to be able to get after the passer. And if there are 2 things that historically Green Bay has struggled with over the last couple of seasons, is getting after the passer and stopping the run. Zadarius Smith is out for an extended period of time, and that is inevitably, that's our best pass rusher. I'd say our best defender, but Jair Alexander is on the field, and I think he is arguably a top 2, top 3 corner, if not the best corner in the entire NFL. There's no Zadarius Smith, which means Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith have to step up and get after the passer. We need to be able to dominate both lines of scrimmage. Because for all the talent that we like to talk about, and I know talking heads, we all like to talk about playmakers, skill position players, quarterbacks, running backs, and wide receivers. But I'm one that believes games are won and lost on the line of scrimmage. And I think we need to get back to dominating both. We need to establish the run, which means being dominant on the offensive line and getting penetration both up front in terms of hitting running backs in the backfield and getting after quarterbacks. So if there are 2 areas of concern for me, we have to establish a run and we have to get after passer, which means dominating the line of scrimmage. Thank you so much as usual. Oh, sorry, Steve, did you want to add something?
Yeah, sorry. Real quick, I just wanted to say, all jokes aside, I agree with you, and I think that Green Bay, they're going to have to establish some sort of pass rush, because if the Detroit Lions have a saving grace, it's the offensive line. Their offensive line isn't the worst in the league. It's not the best in the league, but I think it's a very competent one. I think it's a top 10 offensive line in the National Football League, and that's how they're able to run the football. That's how they're able to keep Jared Goff uptight in the pocket, because they have a good offensive line. And so without Zadarius Smith, you're right. Guys are going to have to do it, in a platoon. Guys are going to have to come in. Preston Smith hasn't been himself since his first year in Green Bay. And so here's an opportunity to really show out. Here's an opportunity to not get cut, maybe, possibly at the end of the season, maybe not get traded. And so, here's the hope and great things from him.
He's gone next season. Remember, mark my words. And I don't, whether his production's good or not, he's gone. But continue, Steve.
Oh, he's gone regardless? You think so?
Oh, I'm sure you've heard me say this, but this really is the last dance. Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Preston Smith, even Zadarius Smith. Mark my words and you'll come back and tell me, oh, Justin, you were right. None of the 4 of those players are returning in 2022. I don't see that happening. But continue, Steezy.
Well, as a Seahawks fan, That's music to my ears, right? No, I just wanted to add that just because you asked earlier, what do I need to see the Packers do to win this football game? Definitely establish a pass rush. I mean, if they can't get to Jared Goff, if they can't stop the run, then this game's going to be a lot closer than people think. It's not going to be a blowout that I'm projecting. So do that, win the football game.
Praying, I'm hoping. Like, I want to say I'm a bit on both sides, but I'm lying. TJ Hawkinson is in my fantasy team, but I don't want to see him do well, even though because I don't need him to put up big points. I think my wife has 3 Packer players in this game. Devontae Adams. I want to see AJ Dillon and Mason Crosby, our kicker. So she has 3 players, but I have such a huge lead on her. Yeah, I can pump my chest and say that. So yeah, I only have TJ Hawkinson left, but I've got I think I want to say a 50-point lead, so I think I'm safe. We need to dominate this game, and if there's one game I don't want to see TJ Hawkinson do well in, it's this one. I can do without points and still win this fantasy matchup. But before you get out of here, first, it's great to see you back to great health. Great to see you back in the studio. So with that being said, what can the fans look forward to seeing from Steezy, and how do they find you?
Yeah, no, obviously, it's always an honor to be on the show. Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you so much, Neil. I'm still looking forward to one day and eventually meeting Marsha. For now, her follow back on Twitter is going to have to suffice. But, man, to everybody that's been tuned in, thank you so much. To everybody that's going to see this, please share. Please drop a like. Please hit that subscribe. Follow This Just In, all forms of social media. After you do that, then you can find me primarily on YouTube at Steezy A Smith, SteeZya Smith. And as he said, finally back in the studio. It's been, I feel like, damn near a month, honestly, since I've been here. I've been dealing with COVID. I was in San Francisco, and so I'm finally back at action. I'm gonna start doing live streams. I want to start dropping more graphics, especially on my Instagram. I want to start giving out my power rankings. I want to start giving out, game picks, weekly pick'ems, my best bets. I want to start doing that type of stuff on my Instagram. And definitely, on top of everything else that I've already been doing, obviously I don't just cover the Seahawks, I cover everything, basketball, I try to do fantasy, boxing, I'm getting more into soccer. And so for those of y'all that are listening, those are definitely some of the things that, I'm about, that I rep, that you can find on my channel. So if any of that sounds interesting, at Steezy A Smith for all things sports, everything in the sports world, everything in my world. But of course, you got to follow This Just In first, and then you can find me.
I appreciate that. Please, if you're watching this show, and when you eventually do watch the show, go follow Steezy A Smith, Seattle's finest. I have another plug to put in here because
I forgot to do that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Just I didn't mean to interrupt, but real fast. This coming Wednesday, he was supposed to be on the show today. Marcus, go talk with Marcus. He wasn't able to show up today, like I just said, but he is going to be hosting his 100th episode this coming Wednesday on Go Talk with Marcus. Dwayne, he's a great guy, a brilliant sports mind. He knows what he's talking about. I'm going to be on there. I think you're going to be on there, Justin. Please, to everybody out there that's listening, you guys got to tune in at Go Talk with Marcus for his live stream for his 100th episode. Let's celebrate. Let's turn up. Let's have fun. Let's talk football. And let's show my brother some love. Go Talk with Marcus. Y'all stay tuned this coming Wednesday. Mark it on your calendars.
You made my job so much easier, so I want to thank you because that was what I was coming to plug. 100th episode, 100 of anything is a special. So as you said, at Go Talk with Marcus on everything. You can find it YouTube. You can find Instagram, Twitter. Yeah, I know he's been busy recently with his Twitter fingers. It is going to be one hell of a show. You're going to find me. You're going to find Steezy. I'm not sure who else he's bringing for that 100th episode. But he will be live on YouTube on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. That is this Wednesday, as in 2 days from now, 100th episode. So you cannot miss Go Talk with Marcus. So, guys, well, first, Steezy, thank you so very much for popping in. Marsha, as well, as usual, on the socials. We got Neil off air producing great shows as always. I am Justin of This Just In, not to be confused with the nonsense that Matt Skellerman is bringing on ESPN on Mondays, but hashtag this Justin. You know to find us Facebook, Instagram, YouTube every Monday night at 8 p.m. Well, I think we're going to shift to 7 p.m. Eastern so we don't clash with Monday Night Football. So again, thank you, Steezy. Go follow at Steezy A Smith on all socials. Follow us and check us on Wednesday night for Go Talk with Marcus. And come back here on Monday nights with this Justin. So for Steezy A Smith, I am Justin, signing out. Good night, everyone.
I don't have a mark on my face, and my upset son in Lisbon, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest. I told the world, I talk to God every day. If God's with me, ain't no matter here, judgment day. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world. I shook up the world.
I said, can I be a legend? Search your soul and answer me this question. Do you think I have what it takes to be great, but still be humble and learn from my mistakes? Shit.